Apparently there's a process to how things go poorly. I'm not exactly sure how you start to identify actions, behaviors, people, organizations in which try to sidestep these big ideas. What I wonder is, we love to champion people who can communicate these ideas pretty well. We try to have some idea or semblance of a thesis that attacks a problem that people don't, or rather cannot find the words to express. So what is the mechanism that's being used there? We essentially understand that we're encumbered by an inability to communicate a pretty broad spectrum problem that many people can feel connections to and sort of fatigue in similar fashions over and over and over. How do we properly harness information in our world? How are we trying our best to not be victims of people harnessing the easiest cheat codes of controlling our world? When we have organizations, individuals, incapable of being reined, we are facing enormous power, yet chained by communicative mechanism, institution, media, that doesn't invite an ability to do anything better than operate in the playground provided for you. What do you do about that? You get loud about it. You write a book about it. Apparently, that's what's been successful for some. That only goes so far, and so I'm wondering. You read a book, you watch a video, you get told something word of mouth. What actually helps you remember when that information is valuable? What is going to actually help bring that moment into when it's most needed? When are you going to have that illness where the cure is instead of where the cure is not? Connecting or bridging moments is essentially what we try to do with stories. Without the labor of context, without the labor of the history, we try to extract a heuristic of a moment to educate ourselves to do better in the next one that we find. How good are you at doing that? How often does the game of story-based telephone fall apart? Maybe you are very good at that. I just know that I'm not. And I find myself failing to reference the moments that I think could best help in a way that feels so frustrating given the moment, the time, the fact we have encyclopedic knowledge by our waist in our phones. We have endless amounts of interconnectivity, yet we still find ourselves lost way more often than we would like to admit. How does life find a way? And we're finding people choose different pockets of comfort, whether that is full security of strong information and credibility, whether that's absolute creativity in a way that possibly sidesteps the hard color within the lines methods that people like to employ. We are giving ourselves a power we don't know what to do with. Sounds oddly similar to what we started with on how things go to shit. An unregulated form of power in which has unguided, unsubstantiated motives, leading to a world that has an identity crisis of sorts. I don't know what you can describe what we have right now in this weird, nebulous world, but an identity crisis would be kind of a good way to start putting it. We're failing to be able to point to exactly to what we're good at, point to exactly what we should be proud about, and point to exactly how we're supposed to put it together. So again, I say we need to talk to people. We need to start remembering our moments better. And 3, we need to make sure that that idea of communicative security mixed with your ability to have creativity and emotion into that blends together and is not sidestepped with the interests of someone that doesn't have yours in mind. So within this idea of technology trying to be an asset, not simply be the definitive authoritative voice of where things should go, it should be a part of a very artistic arsenal of ways to fight back against the powers greater than we can control in order to prevent things from going to shit, right? That's the big danger, is that we are communicatively impugned. We are emotionally distressed. We've had an identity, but we've also grown in a way that doesn't feel as familiar as we may like. And so I wager we see talented people building an arsenal, building vocabulary, building language for us to do better things with. But if we can't recall those, if people don't have those ideas in vogue, you find yourself falling apart. The security of being able to see someone who has spent months working on a piece to help educate people instead of, a stupid YouTube video that's about 10 minutes and consisting of no research. The point is, we need to make sure that we're respecting the institutions in which have properly educated us, while also pairing that with the need to race in a very difficult, socially and emotionally distraught world, trying to harness power that eventually brings your systems to shit. We have seen that sort of a democratic process, a people-powered institution, is very much so to be respected. There's an architecture for big things falling apart. There's an architecture to people being disrespected, and there's an architecture for large systems becoming unregulated car crashes, essentially. Let's see how people feel about that. Can you think of a time something felt clearly broken, but you couldn't do anything about it?
I think you can always do something about it because we all have sovereignty and personal choice. So I feel like if you're in that sovereignty and in that center, we always have a personal responsibility and something we can do. And if we can get enough people who also take that personal responsibility, something that feels broken, that feels insurmountable, if enough people come to that place together, can make a difference.
How do we help people understand how far they can reach? Because I do agree with that. As we define our systems well, we can get together and work on what is solvable, whether it's building a house or building a city. We can come together for those things. Do you think there's any need for people to communicate what to focus on better? Or do you think there's any disconnect there when we talk about issues in a conventional sense?
I think that when we talk about issues in a conventional sense, we usually talk about the negativity of something rather than what we want to see. So what you fight, you feed. So if you're going to do something, you need to fight for something rather than against something, because you end up feeding that.
Gotcha.
So I think as humanity goes, and as we are as conscious beings, we tend to focus on the things we don't want by increasing them. So if we could actually have something like the Super Bowl, but for activism or something like that, where people are really focusing on what they want, I think that is an area where we could have a great shift, and we would see huge shifts in reality with that.
Was there a moment you held back what you really thought because it didn't feel worth it?
If you're in an audience or with somebody who can actually receive what you have to say, if it's going to just inflame a situation, I think it's worth it just to leave it and walk away and not be driven by the ego and being right, but rather being in a space of kindness and compassion in that way. But I rarely walk away. I'm generally somebody who stands pretty firm in something that is really important to my heart, but also what's peace worth.
Think of a time you did say what you really thought. What in that moment made it feel possible? What inhibitions were released?
I think communication is a lot about vulnerability. And one thing that I've learned through my life is dropping down into my heart and really focusing there before speaking. And I think that vulnerability in our culture is not necessarily viewed as a strength, but I think true vulnerability takes an incredible amount of bravery and strength. Vulnerability to really stand up. And I think for me, I feel like I was just born that way a little bit, as far as being able to stand up and really dig into that.
Yeah.
But there is some fear to that sometimes. And so I think that's what a lot of people deal with. And so in regard to the question on like what is released when you actually are able to move through that, and I think it's the fear.
When explaining something important to you, do you lean more on experience or evidence in what sort of makes that decision in any conversation for you?
I'm an incredibly intuitive being and somebody who lives by that and has learned to live by that. So I believe that experience is important, but it depends on your audience. And some people are more scientifically minded. So if I'm working with somebody who is very much in their logical mind, I would say coming up with resources and information and facts allows them to view your point and understand you a little bit better. But in regard to how I actually walk and live my life, it's deeply intuitive, and then the facts usually just follow that, because that intuition and that inner knowing is a guidance system.
You're saying intuitive. You're saying you don't like to have a prescribed decision on how I'm going to treat a person, go into a new space.
Right.
You enjoy to be able to say, I have the capability to digest this, and I don't need to prescribe my way to people, essentially.
Right.
How do you see people fall out of that? How do we talk to people that are inhibited in that way, that sort of feel like held back from being vulnerable in new spaces or hard conversations?
I mean, I feel like that's a little bit of what our culture does. That's what our schooling systems do, is that they kind of take people out of that inner knowing and that space of really trusting themselves, and that space within them that is connected to the energy that creates worlds that we all come from, right? And so I feel like that's part of the soul's journey of being human, is actually kind of forgetting that and then step by step coming back to that truth. And
seeing
some
what you
people,
learned.
and some people have different life lessons, right? So we're each on a different path. So some people may be only in this life to learn a very specific thing, so they may never actually come back into that full remembering. For me, it took almost dying and going through this huge transformational healing process that brought me back to a space of being able to heal insurmountable odds based on listening and that intuition. So that's part of my gift and what I'm here to kind of remind the world of.
Can you think of a time something felt clearly broken, but you couldn't do anything about it?
So I think a lot of the systems, we're college students, right? We're undergrads. So I think the system we're in, we struggle with it quite a bit, but there's not really anything we can do about it. We go to a pretty big public school with 50,000 students. So it's like, 4 kids saying anything isn't going to make any change. And we have every day we talk about like random complaints that we have with classes or administration, the structure in general, whatever it might be, funding. And usually it just remains a conversation and doesn't become action. And I think the reason is because there's no clear path forward as to how it would result in action or how there would be any change.
Yes.
Yeah.
Basically struggling from the fact that whether it's a democratic institution or a small business that's trying to make it work for their employees, you don't find a way to easily coalesce to I forgot what the term is, but basically get enough people to act at the right time to make a change for something that you have a vested interest in.
For sure, yeah.
Have you found any people that have found a path with that? Any idols that you've seen that are successful in that? I know that's something that I try to look for, whether it's authors, whether it's YouTubers, or whether it's people that are trying to raise their voice in the right way. Do you have any methods for finding those types of people, or is that in your goal?
Speaking personally, I don't have anyone that I've been like, oh, this person made a huge change in some.
Do you think that's telling of the times, the fact that we find it harder to champion someone that is rebellious towards the affairs of students, the affairs of employees? Or
Yeah, for sure. But I think a bigger part of it is when we do see potential role models or potential idols, we're very skeptical of them. There was a time where you could believe someone at their word. And today, if I see someone acting as like a champion of the people, my first question is, who's paying you?
God damn, you're
Exactly.
right.
Exactly.
We need a way to form either security to building idols, people that are speaking for us. We need to find ways that don't make us get skeptic and just deflate our own ideas on how to move forward with it.
Yeah, I've long said that lobbying is a very, it's legalized corruption. And I think that, like, honestly, that's probably like the biggest thing in the country overall.
Yes.
Across institutions, across
big
ideologies.
Money touching places that go too deep into communities.
Right.
Is a terrifyingly difficult problem.
Yes.
Think of a time you did say what you really thought. What made that feel possible?
I think probably like the innocence or naivete of childhood, when you think your words have a lot more power, you think your actions have a lot more power, you have a sense of, like, I don't know, justice or fairness in the world. You're like, oh, things should be this way, or you're questioning why things are a certain way. It's like probably then you speak out the most, and over time, the world kind of like makes you submit to the
Sort
big
of
whatever.
social attrition.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
war
Social
of
attrition. Yeah. Exactly.
Oh
Exactly.
God,
Perfect,
I
yeah.
hate that, but yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's like social erosion where you're just like you're trying, but every time it's getting shut down, and eventually you're just like, who cares? I have shit to do. You know.
Do people get clearly people get reborn out of those said depressions of sort where we feel
Sure.
sort of impotent or unable to do something? Do we think that it should be a part of our culture to be motivating out of those depressions more often? Do we feel, again, through the issue of infrastructure, the communication fatigue, the attrition,
Right.
climbing out of
yeah,
that?
like of course. I think, but to answer all these questions, it's like yes, but would it happen realistically? It goes against the interests of the people who have set it up to be a certain way.
Yes.
It's like
These sort of
I don't know.
calcified state
yeah,
of things.
so I don't know.
The
Maybe
NIMBYs
I'm
of sorts.
Yeah, maybe I'm a little pessimistic, but I almost like it's like why even ask the question
Yeah.
when we know the answer already.
I just talk to people all the time. I don't do a lot of research that's like official, so I would definitely lean a lot more on the experience side.
Sure.
Overall, for that, I just lean on the experience and how the general idea of normal people feel about it.
An alignment to
Yeah,
just
because-
socially normal,
Yeah,
right?
because a lot of people are like, well, where's the evidence of that? And I'm like, bro, people just feel that. You can't
Yes.
really like
Vibe-based
collect
dialogue.
data on that. It's just how it is.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't agree with that. But
I think like now there's too much access to data, like it almost invalidates all the data because you can find data to back up anything that you think. And so to me it feels like discouraging to even look for data. If you don't have enough context, you can make any side make more sense than the other one.
That's in this book that I'm sort of basing one of the topics in this video about. It's the idea that in the same way that someone who can be two-faced, for example, be nice to one person while being different to another person, is the same way that if you guys are familiar, Instacart, the grocery store offering, they change prices depending on who is purchasing inside their app. It's sort of this idea of
Just like your Uber.
people. Well, exactly. This book is about big systems like Amazon, Uber, Twitter, how we essentially are victim to systems that know how to control things we don't know how to communicate. Our context falls apart. We don't know what to do. So we sort of speak to our socially aligned selves that is not yet equipped to fight back, if you know what I mean. So can you think of a time something felt clearly broken, but you couldn't do anything about it? You just mentioned Uber. That might be a great way to start, but where is a time where things feel broken?
Well, I actually saw this Instagram video, and it was a commentator talking about how she was ordering an Uber on her Visa card versus a different type of card, like maybe like a
MasterCard.
yeah, and then the prices changed depending on the type of card. And then I was reading the comments, and it was talking about how this is a type of discrimination. And then I had this conversation with my sister about how like these companies and these types of like systems can do these things to us,
Manipulative
where they, like,
tactics,
yeah, where they
on the
like
whole.
manipulate us and withhold information. And because we don't have we just don't have access to that, or like the privilege to, like, I can't even imagine other people who just don't even know about this.
Right.
And they,
You can't compare for yourself. There isn't
Yeah.
competition for the user. It's pretty much a top-down nebula, essentially.
Have you heard that like some grocery stores are starting to do digital prices?
They have the like
Yes.
e-ink
Yeah.
little, yes,
Yes.
that was in the book. This is awesome.
Yeah.
That's very cool.
Because it's like the same thing where it's like if they have physical prices, then you as the consumer get to like compare, and you get to actually like decide, oh, do I want to like go to this grocery store or that grocery store, right? And they don't have time to like change it based off of what else you have seen or where else you have been, I guess, or like what the other competitors are doing. It's kind of like the Uber one, but it's like a little bit more like Uber and Lyft. I feel like have such a monopoly on like transportation,
yeah.
like I don't know, for people, but I feel like grocery stores is a little bit more like variety.
Yeah, I used to work at Target, and they would make me, this is when Donald Trump got into office and all that shit happened, but they would make me take off the prices of the tags or put stickers on top of them, and people were like, this is so expensive, like, look, they're taking off the stickers and being like, oh, the prices are off, and I'm like, yeah, this is what you guys voted for. Sorry.
So you're actively seeing just price fixation or price manipulation. And so we're basically naming things which seem so tangible, they're affecting the bottom line of how much comes out of our wallet, but we feel no way to say, go to these corporations to say, like, what the fuck is going on? We don't feel a way to raise a voice, and there's a what is it called? Critical action. There's a name for this. Getting enough people to speak up at the right time without getting fatigued, getting attritioned, or something like that. So working, and this big part of what I'm trying to look at is what techniques can we use to help build awareness, build a platform like the things we have, Instagram, Twitter, any social media we have, where these points of activism are a focal point, and that we don't have it be hidden from us in a variety of ways.
I just feel like we're in such a late stage of capitalism that we're just taking it as it is. Like, we can't do anything about it. Obviously, we have to go eat. We have to go eat. We have to go buy the groceries. We can't go to the CEO and be like, "Oh, fix your prices." The CEO is going to be like, "I'm getting you food delivered to your door. Like,
yes.
What more do you want from me?" So it's just hard. Like, if you're in a hard situation where you have to get millions of people on the same page, half of those people believe it's the right thing to be paying for these services. Half the other people don't even have money to be paying for the services, and it's hard to get everyone on the same page. It's just, in my head, is just a little bit impossible.
It feels insurmountable.
I don't need any explanations.
Can you think of a time something felt clearly broken, but you couldn't do anything about it? How did you deal with that situation?
Well, I thought you said it was about media literacy.
Oh, yes. In this case, it is in the genre.
In this case, the government's broken.
Yes.
Yeah. I thought you were going to ask me questions about media, and I'm ready to answer those now.
Okay.
There are things broken all the time that I can't do anything about because it requires group action of millions of people at once.
Yes.
Yeah.
A collective action problem of sorts.
Hey, Mr. Peters.
How are you tonight?
Good. How are you tonight?
Good. Nice to see you.
Are you a professor?
Go ahead. Keep going.
Fantastic. Think of a time you did say what you really thought. What made that feel possible?
All the time.
Yes.
Being born made that feel possible.
You think being born, it was
I've always said what I thought.
Yes.
And I didn't need any permission or anything to change for me to do that.
When explaining something important, do you lean more on experience or evidence on the average?
Both.
Copy that.
Yeah.
What decides for you which way you choose, and what kind of characters
Gregory
change?
Corso, American poet, told me if you have to choose between two things, choose both.
Understood.
Yeah.
How do you do that if your worlds are torn apart?
My world's not torn apart.
How do we get more people to feel as awesome as this sounds?
I'm not sure. I've read a lot of books in my life. I talk to people every day.
Yes.
I try to open my heart. I'm not drunk or on drugs, you know?
Good
I'm not
points.
against people drinking or doing drugs. But I'm just a clear-headed person who's been at work all day.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I envy that. What
about the questions about media literacy?
Well, this is all dancing on top of the point of how we fail to have our media tools, our social media tools, focus on collective action.
Social media is different than media literacy.
Sure.
Right.
In these cases, it's essentially seeing how big companies, whether we're looking at Uber, Twitter, Instagram, in ways that they take control away from the
Twitter and Instagram. Okay, I don't use Uber and Twitter. And I use Instagram every day, but Instagram's for illiterate people that want to communicate with pictures. People
I do like the sound.
Verbally illiterate, you know?
Sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, Instagram's a great way to communicate, and a lot of people know how to communicate with photos, but it has nothing to do with media literacy.
You think so?
I consider the media to be television and the newspaper and film and radio.
Do we see...
social media... Really, as my mom, who was born, 100 years ago, said that she thinks it's just a new reason for people to feel bad about themselves.
A new way to push people into depressions.
Well, no, for people to feel bad and people to compare themselves to other people that aren't presenting their life in a factual way. But people in America and the world today can get a lot from one photo that they look at for 1 second. When you said media literacy, I thought you were talking about radio, TV, film, newspaper.
I would have to
like
argue that I agree deeply that our classic media have been blended deeply into our future medias, and that for us to not be able to tie them in the same tactics used in our classic media, used today in a way to control whatever it might be, from our purchasing patterns to who we trust.
Right. Do you have any questions about media literacy for me?
In the final stance, how do you think that people fall apart from classic media like you've referenced? How do people fall away from books, newspaper,
right now,
in these
I think,
systems?
The media is trying to grab your attention with sensational headlines and isn't really concerned with communicating the truth.
Yes.
And as a kid in America, I believed what I was told, and I believed that the media was supposed to report the truth.
Yes.
And now they'll tell you it's going to be 90 degrees tomorrow because they want you to look at their article about weather.
Yes.
And they're not concerned with the accuracy of whether or not it's going to be 90 degrees tomorrow. You know, all of the media right now is trying to capture your attention quickly with sensational headlines, and nothing in the articles ever backs it up.
Yes.
And that makes me feel disappointed in media all the time. You know,
Thank
as far
you.
as social media, it's doing the same thing same thing that American culture always did.
Mm-hmm.
It makes pretty people with rich parents feel good about
It's
themselves.
a very difficult to handle amplification engine of
You know,
sorts.
like if you're a little kid and you read books every day and you're trying to do good in school, it probably doesn't help you be happy about your life because it makes you feel like if your dad doesn't have a Bentley and if you weren't born with perfect teeth that you don't have a chance. But you know, a lot of those people who I've met, a lot of people that have hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram, they're not always happy in a conventional sense, and a lot of them sit quietly alone and read books or spend time alone with their boyfriend or girlfriend quietly, you know.
Sure.
They don't really care about what hundreds of thousands of people think about them every day.
Right.
The people that care about what people think of themselves and what other people think of themselves every day don't have a lot of people looking at their Instagram.
Right.
The people that have a million followers aren't concerned what their million followers are thinking about them.
They're following some other heuristic, some other.
And if they
goal set.
are concerned with what a million people think of them, they're not going to survive.
I like that.
Okay.
Can you think of a time something felt clearly broken, but you couldn't do anything about it? That's our first question.
Oh yeah, man. And we're talking about jobs specifically?
It can be any context, but a place where you have found difficulty in that broken system, or an instance where it's felt difficult to break out, maybe.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess I'll get real. I work at Dairy Queen. I also work at Z2. I was just doing security, but I work at Dairy Queen too, and I've been there for like 2 years. But I worked there a bit in high school too. Anyway, my boss is pretty like old school. He's run the company for a long time, but he's kind of stuck in his old ways. He mostly struggles with scheduling,
Sure.
and he usually posts the schedule for the week like the day before. Like for Monday, yesterday, right? He on Sunday he posted the schedule at like 8 p.m. So we didn't know if we were working tomorrow until like 8 p.m. So, and I and that really has been difficult. I've adapted. You know, I don't take as many shifts now. I close my availability more, especially with my new job. But and then I'll just pick up other people's shifts, kind of work around them more. You know.
So this is fascinating in the reason of it's an analog for a lot of
Yeah,
systems that we deal with.
it's so analog.
You are an individual who gets to also exercise some power there. The fact that you can decrease your availability against a system that's not treating you
Yeah.
the best that it could be, right?
Mhm.
We're talking about your time is not being respected.
Yeah.
And you also having, in this case, the efficacy of saying, I'm not going to show up if you're not going to show
Right.
me respect in that way.
Well, and on top of that too, I was like, we should do a scheduling app or some sort of program or whatever software that'll just do the scheduling. It'll make it easier. And he was like, no, I won't approve it. This is harder than you think. You know, old white bald boss stuff. And I
Highly
was like,
calcified.
yeah, very calcified, thinks he knows what's best, like without any reception of new ideas or change with technology and making things more efficient where they could be. And
Especially
instead,
when you have direct affecting your employees, your
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. So
That's-
that's very frustrating. But yeah, I just kind of adapt to it and pick up shifts from other people, and that usually works pretty well for me.
Right on. Think of a time you did say what you really thought. What made that feel possible? Who around you supported it? What defined that for you when you had to make a challenging decision?
When I said what I thought, well, The example that comes to mind actually regarding Dairy Queen isn't my action, but it was my brother's. He was working at Dairy Queen with me, and one night he couldn't figure out how to turn something off. There was some sort of technology he was dealing with, right? So he calls our boss. It was probably like not even 10. And he's like, how do I turn this off? And our boss was so mad and frustrated and being really rude to him. And my brother was trying to figure out what he was saying while he was like pissed off at him. I don't know if he woke up or whatever. But anyway, then he was being rude to my brother on the phone while he's trying to fix something. And he's like, you know what? You're not going to talk to me this way. I quit. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to work for you if you're going to talk to me this way. So he just quit. And, I'm proud of him for that. He stood up for himself. My younger brother, and he's trans and he's more introverted and more like, apprehensive and doesn't do that sort of thing a lot. So the fact that he stood up for himself there was inspiring and, showed me that you don't have to take that sort of thing, especially from somebody who's handling their business irresponsibly.
Yes. And so being able to have both the ability to be vulnerable, whether there's an economic issue at hand with losing a job, or being able to have the self-respect required to fight back against disrespect. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you're fine, one more question?
Absolutely, man.
When explaining something important, do you often find yourself leaning more on experience or evidence on the average? What decides that for you?
Could you ask that again, please?
Sure. When explaining something that's important or challenging, do you lean more on experience or evidence on the average?
On something that's challenging, I would say probably experience. I mean, you definitely have a mix of both, but I think things like that can be so specific that sometimes you don't have tangible evidence. I mean, your experience kind of can be your evidence, you know what I mean?
Sure.
I've found that it's best to do it this way in my experience. You could try it a different way. There's evidence, there's directions to maybe do it slightly differently, but I found that doing it this way is the best,
Being able to be in spaces where you don't have to slough off the experience as anecdotal. You say, I've had enough experience in this scoped problem.
Yeah.
There should be some respect to what I've seen because we can't always know every answer. Perfection is the enemy of good when we need to get the job done.
Right.
How can we balance that appropriately?
Totally.
And that's absolutely a great way to think about that.
Yeah, I think that's most applicable in new situations. You know, if you're experienced in a job and you're in a position where something happens that hasn't happened before and you're trying to teach somebody new about it, and you won't have evidence, right? And you don't have experience on that specific topic, but evidence that relates to other things that are adjacent maybe don't apply exactly, where your experience can maybe be more applicable to a new situation like that, a new challenge. You can say, I've experienced new things that I haven't before in this job, and with those, I dealt with it this way. So we should do that same sort of process with dealing with this new challenge.
When you're lost in the middle of the mountains, you don't get to have some prescribed list. You've lost your map. You've got to be able to figure out what can I do with all that I have.
Right.